We're going to start the Gemara on Daf Beis Amid Beis. Hopefully you don't still have your Gemara Makas in front of you. Start the Gemara. Michti. Tanami Makas Solik. Maishna de Tani Shavuos. How did we go from Makas, we're talking about Malkus, right? Elohim Aloikin, and now we go to this Masechta Shavuos, talking about Shavuos. So Mishum Dutani Chayev ala Roish Shtayim ala Roish Shtayim Achas Mikan v'Achas Mikan. Since it said in the end of Makas, it said Yichayev on the head, meaning when someone is Makav Pa'as Roish, right? When he cuts the hair around his head, it says Chayev Shtayim Achas Mikan v'Achas Mikan, one on each side, and if he does both of them together, he's going to be mechayev double. There are 5 points on the face that a person is chayev for shaving with a razor. So, chada the mechayev l'atati. So these are things that you do one thing and you mechayev more than one. So tana shavuos shtayim shein arba. So therefore, we also said shavuos, which also the Torah we talk about it as a shavua. But it's not exactly the same thing where you're doing one thing and you mechayev multiples, but it's also something that things that are said in the same way. Shtayim shehem arba or achas shehem, like we said over there, you have achas, one lav that is shtayim that you can be mechayev two things. So this is a similar concept. You have shtayim that are mentioned in the pasuk, and it really is four. That we learn out a total of 4 things. So the Torah, the Gemara, the Mishnah, put similar types of formulations, similar types of constructs together. So the Gemara asks, how come? If that's the explanation, so whatever the explanation of why we went from Makas to Shavuos, but now we're in Shavuos, and we started with Shavuos, which is Shtayim Shehein Arba. Then we said, in addition to Shavuos, we also said Maris Nagayim, we said Shabbos, we said Yedias HaTumah. Why, when we have Haitzah of Shabbos, we say Shtayim Shehein Arba b'Shabbos, but we didn't say anything about these other things. We didn't say Shavuos, and we didn't say Yedias HaTumah. And by Negayim also, it says the Lashon of Shtayim Shein Arba, but doesn't list everything together with it. So Armi, Shavuos v'Yedias HaTumah, the Gabi Hadadi Ksiv, and V'Damyan Hadadi. Shavuos and Yedias HaTumah that are next to each other, meaning they're both in the parsha of Oyla v'Yared. Ksiv, and V'Damyan Hadadi, the carbon Oyla v'Yared, and additionally, they both get the carbon earlier. Tanulu Gabi Adadi. They were both put together. Now, I'm just going to point out, just because it's going to be relevant later, I have a lot of enough from this recognition. Why is it making like 2 things? The reason why they're both carbon earlier is because they're ksivin, Gabi Adadi ksivin. They're in the same parsha. Why are you separating 2 things? It's ksivin Adadi and Damian Adadi with carbon earlier. The Gemara later on is going to suggest a pshat that says what we're not talking about here we're not talking about the chi of carbonary leviyard, but rather we're talking about the chi of malchus. We're talking about being mechuyev malchus. But you still have that ksivin hadadi. You don't want to have later on, the Gemara didn't want to have it later on, when we're going to say that we're talking about malchus. If you go back and say, oh, if that's the case, then you don't have your explanation of these are not 2 similar things anyway. So he's saying, no, but they're still written in the same parsha, even if that's not what we're referring to. Zaktamara v'aidi de tana tarti tana kulu. And since we already had 2 things that they're very similar, they both come from the same parsha and they get the same einish. So once we said 2 shnayim shein arbas, then we said the whole list together. So we said also the Yedias HaTumah and Maris Nagayim. The Mishnah had started. It says Shavuos is Shtayim Shein Arba. Then it says Yitzidei HaTumah is Shtayim Shein Arba. Then the Gemara when the Mishnah, I'm sorry, comes back to explain, it starts explaining Yediyas HaTumah, and later on in the Masechta, we're going to get back to Shavuos. Why don't we first explain Shavuos before we start with Yediyas HaTumah? Right? It's first mentioned in the list. It mentions Shavuos first, and then Yediyas HaTumah, but an explanation, but Yediyas HaTumah first. So Gemara, Aidi dezurta milayu pasuk shari lahu. Since there's not that much about Yediyas HaTumah, it might have seemed substantial when we did it yesterday, but in the big scheme of things, we don't have as much about it as we have in Shavuos. So we want to dispense with the explanation of Tumah first in the Mishnah, and then we'll get back at length to deal with Shavuos. So now the Gemara is going to go back and explain in a little bit more detail what the Shavuos, which we explained as we were doing the Mishnah, and now the Gemara, it came from the Gemara. So the Gemara is going to explain what these Shtayim Shein Arbas are. Shavuos Shtayim Shein Arba, Shtayim is Sha'eichel v'Shaloyeichel. If someone says that I'm going to eat or I'm not going to eat, that is what the Torah describes in the parsha of Oyla v'Yared. And that's what's Shtayim, one, both that I will eat and that I won't, which you said L'toiva lahara, which is equivalent to I will eat or I won't eat. Shehein Arba, Achalti v'Shalei Achalti, where he makes a shvua that I ate in the past or I didn't eat, which is not directly mentioned in the pasuk. Yediyas HaTumah Shtayim Shehein Arba, Shtayim Yediyas Tumas Kodesh v'Yediyas Tumas Mikdash. Like we explained, that Yediyas HaTumah is a reference to the first two are that it's mentioned in the pasuk is where he knows that the mikdash is kodesh, and he knows that this kachim is kodesh, but he forgets that he is tamei. And shein arba is the other way around, kodesh u mikdash. He forgot, he was nelami menu, he was covered from him the fact that the mikdash was kodesh, or that this piece of kachim was kodesh, and he ate it while he was tummy. So it's a question. The shtayim is where he forgot his tumah, and the shein arba is the two things that he forgot that they are kodesh, and while he knows he's tummy, but he didn't know he's not allowed to touch them because he didn't realize they were kodesh. Yitzir shabbos shaim shein arba haitzaya da'ani v'haitzah da'balabayis. That's talking about where haitzah, when something's going from the inside to the outside. One is from the ani who's standing outside and sticks his hand in and brings something out. The other one is the balayis, the person standing inside, who takes his hand, picks something up, and brings it outside. Shein arba, which is achnosa, the ani v'achnosa, the balayis. When something's going, the object is going the other direction. It's going from outside to in, from the Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Yachid, and it's from the ani who's standing outside who does it, or the balayis standing inside who does it. Mars Nagoim Shnaim Shem Arba Shnaim Sheis v'Baheres. The two are the Seis v'Baheres, two varieties of Tzaras. Shein Arba Seis v'Toleseh, Baheres v'Toleseh. That's the Toldos of Seis and the Toldos of Baheres. Each one has a Tolda. So that's the Shein Arba. The Gemara is going to explain that later, what the Toldos are. Zok the Gemara, money. Mastisim lo Rabbi Yishmael v'lo Rabbi Kiva. Frak the Gemara, we have a stew. Our Mishnah l'chayra cannot be either like Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, and they have a couple of machlokes, and it's going to come out. We can't go like either one of them. So we want to have a Tana for our Mishnah. Rabbi Shmuel Amar Ein Chayiv Ela Al Asid Lavai. We're going to have later on in this Masechta that Rabbi Shmuel disagrees that Oyla v'Yared, you're going to be mechayiv an Oyla v'Yared for making a shvua of the Shehin Arba that we said, where he says that he says he makes a shvua, I ate something, or shvua that I did eat something. That's not a Oyla v'Yared. The Oyla v'Yared is only lahaba when he made a shvua that he won't eat or a shvua that he will eat, and then he violates that shvua. So our Mishnah says Shehin Arba. So what's Rabbi Shmuel? What's the Shehin Arba? Rabbi Kiva Amar Allah. Rabbi Kiva, we have a problem by Yediyas HaTumah. Ha'amar al helam tumah chayiv ve'en chayiv al helam mikdash. He says that you're only mechoyev Oyla v'Yared for not knowing that he's tamei, but if he doesn't know that the kodesh, that the mikdash is that that the mikdash is the mikdash, or he doesn't know that this kachim is kachim, and he touches it betuma, that's not the chiyuv oila v'yared. Which, if you'll remember, we had a machlekes in the Mishnah about what the psukim were referring to, and one man, the Amr, said that the musaf of Rish Chodesh is going for this din for a tar that touches Kodesh, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not relevant. It's not.
No.
Sorry, it's a different din. Okay, but this is Rabbi Kiva Shita that you're only chayev al helam mikdash. You're not chayev on a helam mikdash. So again, it can't be Rabbi Kiva because of Yediyas Atom. So Ibo is saying Rabbi Yishmael, Ibo is saying Rabbi Kiva. I can answer up according to both of them with the exact same teretz. Ibo is saying Rabbi Yishmael mehen l'chiv mehen l'ptur. Ibo is saying Rabbi Kiva mehen l'chiv mehen l'ptur. I can say, we're mentioning Shtaim Shehin Arba. So that's saying some of you get the oil of Yair and some don't. It's saying Shtaim Shein Arba. They're both Asur, but not all of them are getting the oil of Yair. It's this very similar thing. The Torah says there's obviously the two things in both cases, both by Yediyas Atuma and by the Shavuos. The Shavuos of the Shavuos l'sha'avar is closely related to Shavuos l'loss. It's the same thing, just backwards. And the Yediyas Atum is also, whether it's the reversed, whether you're talking about he knew, he forgot about his tumah, he forgot about the object's tumah. So even though you're not chayiv in oil of Yair, the Torah is saying the Mishnah is saying shtaim shein arba, that there is a chiyuv on both of them. Practical Gemara l'ptur. How could you say it's coming to say that you're potter? Hadam yedemaris negoyim tani ma hasam kulu chiyuva havacha nami chiyula. So, if we're talking about Maris Nagayim, hold on. Maris Nagayim is not a question of oil of Yared. Oh no, it is. I'm sorry, it is. Maris Nagayim is talking about oil of Yared. It's mentioned in the parsha of that we read at the beginning before we started the parak. So, and it's saying all that Machmachoyev, all the Maris Nagayim, the Taldas of Maris Nagayim are not potter from the oil of Yared. So how?
That's why we didn't ask the kasha from Shabbos, I'm assuming.
Right. Shabbos is not oil of Yared, but Maris Nagayim is oil of Yared, and they all get the oil of Yared. So how could you say? But the first two are different. So we'll go back to saying it's Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael, we had the problem that he said the Shavua l'sha'avar. You're not going to be chayiv oil of Yared for v'chila mechayiv Rabbi Yishmael l'sha'avar carbon. Aval malkas chiyuvim mechayiv. We say that Rabbi Yishmael is entirely not talking about the chiyuv of oil of Yared l'gabe Shavua. He's talking about the chiyuv malkas. So they're both going to have the same chiyuv, just like Negayim. It's talking about they're all going to be mechayiv in oil of Yared. The Gabi Shavuos, according to Rabbi Yishmael, they're all going to be mechayiv. All four, Shtaim Sheim Arba, the Gabi getting malchus. So they're getting the equivalent chiyuv. So when Rabbi Yishmael said that you're not chayiv l'sha'avar, when he makes a shvuah l'sha'avar, that means he's not going to bring the carbon oil of Yared, but he's going to be mechayiv malchus. Ukid Rava, the Amar Rava, the Feirish Reb Sotira, shvuah sheker, dum yedut shvuah shav. Well, when you make a shvuah l'sha'avar, that's a shvuah sheker of bitui, right? This what what we discussed in the Parshas Oil of Yared that we read. It says levate b'sasayim. It's talking about a shvuah bitui when he makes a declaration that's false, and that's dum yedudush, and it's brought next to the sugya, the parsha of shvuah shav. We make a hekesh to shvuah shav. Now, shvuah shav is when somebody just says something that's absolutely ridiculous. He says something like, "I'm making a shvuah that the sun is made of green cheese." I mean, maybe that's not ridiculous. The sun is dark. The sun is black. It's not true. Or he makes a shvuah that whatever, something, I'm gonna drink the whole ocean. So on that we say that there's malchus. Mashu shav l'sha'avar Afshua kasha and afshua shav l'sha'avar afshua sheker nami l'sha'avar. So just like a shua shav is always l'sha'avar, there's no making a shua shav for the future, because when he's saying it, it's immediately a shua shav. So when we say l'sha'avar, it doesn't really mean for the past. It means that it's not for the future. Every shua l'sha'avar is really about something that he had done previously, but it's taking effect now. It's really a shua's a haiva, a present shvua. So sheker is also namil shava. So just like shua shav gets malchus, so he's also going to get shuas malchus for shua sheker. And the reason why we need this limit, Rashi explains, is because a shvua is a lav she'en b'maisa. So we learn out from the hekesh to shua sheker, where the Torah says we have a limud by shua sheker that you pay. I'm sorry, not a shua sheker, by shua shav that there's malchus on it. So shua sheker, which is also the sha'avar, the shua sheker l'sha'avar is going to get malchus. Zaktimar. Bishlama achalti v'lo achalti k'derava. So we just explained how we know this malchus on the l'sha'avar part by the shehin arba part of the shtaim shehin arba, that was saying is going like Rabbi Yishmael, because like we just said from Rava that you learn out from Shua Shav. Shaloi oichel v'oichel nami lav she'en b'maisu. And when he says I'm not going to, I'm sorry. Shaloi oichel, he says I'm not going to eat, and then he ate. It's a lav she'esh b'maisa, so we understand why he gets malchus for that. Elo oichel v'lo yachal, when he made a shvua that I will eat, and he didn't eat, amai lav she'en b'maisa, who that's not similar to shvua shav, and it's a lav she'en b'maisa. So how are we going to know? How do we talk to know? We're saying that we're switching it off. We're going from Eilah B'Yair to say we're talking about Malchus, and they're all the same. All the Shtaim Shein Arbel Kunja B'Shmuel are the same. But why is he taka chayiv Malchus for the lav she'ein b'maisa of making a shvua la'asid that I'm going to eat, and he didn't eat? He didn't do a maisa. It's like, because Rabbi Shmuel lav she'ein b'maisa like in a love. So because he holds taka, even though with a lav she'ein b'maisa, you still get Malchus. Zak Gemara, ihachi kasha de Rabbi Yochanan de Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara says, so if that's the case, so we've come to the conclusion, according to this, the way we're understanding, that our Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Shmuel, and you're going to be mechoyev malchus on the shvua, the shtayim of shtayim shein arba by shvua, in spite of the fact it's a lav shein b'maisa, because it was a lav shein b'maisa is like in love. That's going to cause a problem, because then our Mishnah is a stam Mishnah that says lav shein b'maisa malchus like in love. Kasha Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan halachas kastam Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan says halachas is like a stam Mishnah. So he's saying like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is saying lav she'en b'maisa like in love. Ve'itmar shvua she'oichel kika zayayim v'ava ayam v'layachla. Someone made a shvua that I'm going to eat this kikar today, and the day passed and he did not eat it. So it's a little bit different than what we were talking about shvua she'oichel or shvua she'oichel v'layachla. This is shvua she'oichel, but he didn't. He made a time limit on it, and then that time limit passed. Both of them agree you don't come malchus. Rabbi Yochanan says this is a lav she'en b'maisa, and that's why you're not like on it. This is a problem. We before we get to the end of this, we immediately see the problem. We said Rabbi Yochanan holds like this halacha is like a stam mishnah. We said our mishnah is Rabbi Shmuel, and it's stam mishnah that lav she'en b'maisa is like an love, and now he's saying he's paskening lav she'en b'maisa is ain't like an love. But then now to continue with the machlokes, we had this back in Makkos that Rish Lakish disagrees. He says the reason is not because of lav she'en b'maisa is ain't like an love. Rish Lakish taka pasket will hold like that lav she'en b'maisa is, or at least that's what we try to say over there. We had the whole discussion about this, but he says the reason is because Hasra Safik, when he's making the Hasra, whenever he's going to make the Hasra, he's never going to know, is this the exact, does he have enough time to finish eating it before nightfall? Whenever he's going to make the Hasra, it's always going to be uncertain if the person is going to be over on his Shavuot. Hasra Safik Loish Masra. So then for the Gemara. So the Gemara has a stira, if you hold that this is going that over here we're talking about Rabbi Shmuel, and he holds, and it's saying Lav Shem Maisa is like an love. So the Gemara Rabbi Yochanan Stomach Ashkach. The Gemara says no. This is not shver, that which Rabbi Yochanan paskins that Lav She'en B'Maisa is ain't like enough, because in addition to our stama, he found a different stam. Our stam Taka says, according at the Gemara at this point says that Lav She'en B'Maisa is like an love, but there's a different stam that he had that says it's not like an love. High stama, which is the stam? Ilay Mehastam, the Tnan. Aval HaMoiser B'Tor, someone who left over for the Korban Pesach, a Torah Korban Pesach, or someone who we had this back in Makis, or someone who breaks the bone of a Tomei Korban Pesach, Ein Eloika, es Arbaim, they don't get Malkus. So Bishlam Shayve B'Tomei Dichsev Etzem Leishishbu by Bekashav V'Lei B'Pasel. We have a pasuk that tells you that the din, the lav, that you're not allowed to break the bone of a Korban Pesach, only refers to a viable Korban Pesach. It's only Bekasher V'Lei B'Pasel. Aval HaMoiser B'Tor, my timer. Why is it that someone who leaves over from a Korban Tar, a regular Korban Pesach, and he's Moiser, he's over on nicer on it? Why doesn't he get Malkus? La mishum dahavi lav she'en b'maisa v'chol lav she'en b'maisa ain't like a love. So the Gemara. No, it's not necessarily because lav she'en b'maisa like a love. Or meider Reb Yaakov hidam lav she'en b'maisa ain't like a love. Well, how do you know to explain the reason why you're not chayiv Malkus by nicer, and we're saying that there's a stam that contradicts our stam over here that Rabbi Shmuel, that Rabbi Yochanan is passing like? Maybe the reason over there in that second stam, the reason why you're not going to be chayiv you're not going to be chayiv Malkus on nicer is not because lav she'en b'maisa like a love, which is the way Rabbi Yaakov explains it. Dilma, Rabbi Yehudi, Mishum Deba Kosov, Nesayach Aloisase. Maybe it's a law Nitak Lase. Right? Nicer, the Torah says, Be'esh Yisraifu, you have to burn it. So maybe that's the reason why it doesn't get Malkus. In that case, the Stam Mishnah over there that says you don't get Malkus for Nicer is not contradicting our Stam Mishnah, it's just a Yechidah. It's not a Stam Mishnah, it's a Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yaakov is a Yechidah. He's not a Stam Mishnah. It's just his Shita that Lav She'en B'Maisa. But that would not be a reason for Rabbi Yochanan to paskin like him. And we're stuck still that Rabbi Yochanan has no one to base it on to switch his mind from saying originally Lav She'en B'Maisa in our Stam Mishnah is like an love, like Rabbi Shmuel. And now he's saying that he doesn't have a Stam Mishnah that says Faket. Which is,
No, it's really a lav she'en b'maisa like love, like Rabbi Huda. And that mission over there that we wanted to bring as like a raya.
a second stam. We
Second
want it to be
stam.
specifically stam. It could be holding like a different Tana.
Right, like Rabbi Yaakov, right? So we're saying,
Yeah.
no, it's not Rabbi Yaakov, it's really Rabbi Huda. But over there, because it's the lav she'en b'maisa, therefore it's the rules, the regular rule
That's
doesn't
the reason
apply.
why you don't get Malkus. There's nothing to do with Lav She'en B'Maisa. Allah achilaki the Tanya loisimen rad bike of anismen rad bike beishi srofa ba kosav the nesa achal loisa say loy meshem like love div Rabbi Yehuda v'Yaakov em loy min Hashem uzeh. That's not the explanation. Ela mishum dehava lav she'en b'maisa and like love. So the Gemara says so we see that could be the explanation. Zak Gemara Ella high stomachkach. Rabbi Yochanan has a second stam. It's not that stam, it's a different stam. Shvua shalei oichel kikazu. If someone makes a shvua that I'm not going to in the future eat this loaf, shvua shalei echlena, and he says a second shvua repeating the same thing that I'm not going to eat it. It's slightly different. That one is that I'm not going to eat anything from this loaf, and one is that I'm not going to eat the entire loaf. V'achla, and then he went and ate it. He's only chayiv one. So that means that when you make two shuas, and one is once he made the first shua that he's not going to eat anything from this loaf, from this kikar, so then he can't eat any part of it. So now he makes the second shua. It's just it can't be chal on the second one. he already had a mitzvah. He was already mechuyev to eat the loaf. No, I'm sorry, to not eat it. So when he makes a second shvuah, it's a shvuah to confirm what he's already mechuyev to do minat Torah. Like we had this back in Makkos, that when you make a shvuah to do something that you're, like we said it Legabi, where he said to do something on Yom Tov. He said, I'm going to observe Yom Tov. Said it's not, such a shvuah is not chal. You can't make a shvuah to do something that the Torah requires you to do. So by virtue of his first shvuah, he's already mechuyev to do this. So Zaktamara, so the Brisa continues, Zui shvuas bitoy shechayv and alzdayin makas. This is a shvuas bitoy that you chayiv and a makas. Al shigasa carbon oil of yard. And if you do it b'shayig, it's a carbon oil. So Zaktamara, Zuhi the chayiv and alzdayin makas. This is the case which you do it lahaba that you're going to be mechayiv makas. So it must be you don't get for doing it lisha avar. I'm sorry for the future. If he makes a shvuah that he says I'm going to eat, and he doesn't eat, then he doesn't get malchus. And what's the reason? It must be because it's a lav she'ein b'maisa and it's not like in love. So this is a stam mishnah. This is what Rabbi Yochanan was supporting himself to go fakert from we said before. So Zak the Gemara michti. High stomach, high stomach. My chazid David high stomach, David high stomach. What did Rabbi Yochanan get? Rabbi Yochanan passing like a man. So why? What urged him to go with this second stam and not with our Mishnah? How could this is a stam Mishnah later on. So before you start with Rabbi Yochanan and say why did he decide? Ask the more basic question: how could Rebbe have two separate stam mishnahs? Why would he make stam? Even if we don't always paskin like it, it certainly is a point in favor of paskening. So why would Rebbe formulate it in that way to make two stam mishnahs? And he said that as a stam. Rebbe Taka held it was a stam like that. Savar ain't like on a love. Then he changed his mind. Rebbe was chayzer on that, and he said the second one to say that I'm being chayzer from the first one. Well, Mishnah loizazim im kaima, but he didn't want to remember. This is all Torah Shabbal Peh, and people were remembering it. They were forced to memorize it. So in order to avoid confusion, Rabbi said, I'm not going to go back and make people remember the first Mishnah, the stam. Since I made a second stam, they'll know that it's incorrect, and that will be sufficient. So Rabbi Yochanan also did the same thing. He went with the second stam. He said that was the reversal of Rabbi's original stam. Okay, Yasher Kayach. I'll see you tomorrow at 6:30.
Thank you.
Yes,
Have a good day.
Have a great day.